Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise today to offer an amendment that I think every member of this body can support, no matter how they intend to vote on final passage of H.R. 1638. This amendment simply seeks to insert a single new requirement into the report required by H.R. 1638, and that new requirement is as follows, quote, an assessment of the impact and effectiveness of U.S. economic sanctions programs against Iran. Whether you voted for the Iran deal or against it, or whether you think economic sanctions are an effective diplomatic tool or something that sounds better than it is, I hope you will support this amendment. We should make evidence-based policy decisions in this body whenever possible, and toward that end, we should know whether or not the sanctions that we pass here work. If we're going to require a new report from Treasury in this bill, and that report must include, quote, a description of how Treasury assesses the impact and effectiveness of U.S. economic sanctions programs against Iran, end quote, I think it's only appropriate to ask for the assessment itself, and that is what this amendment does. Let me put it another way. Understanding how we count votes in America is important, but at the end of an election, I want to know the final tally. Who won? Who lost? What did we learn? Similarly, I think it's important that if Treasury is going to have to produce a new report on sanctions against Iran pursuant to H.R. 1638, that we understand exactly how Treasury intends to assess the impact and effectiveness of those sanctions. Even more importantly, though, I think this report should include the results of that assessment, particularly when it comes to sanctions we have authorized. That is all this amendment seeks to require, and I hope everyone in this body will support it. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves the balance for time. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I rise to claim time in opposition to the amendment, although I am not opposed.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the gentlelady from New York for her amendment. I note that she was a supporter of H.R. 5461, a nearly identical bill that passed the House in the last Congress. I think that her amendment is a valuable addition to H.R. 1638, and indeed, we should always know the effectiveness of the programs that we promote, and in this case, we do need to understand how effective economic sanctions may be. So I appreciate her leadership, and I would urge all members to vote aye on the amendment, and I yield back.